Hey, what's up? Let me know how my audio volume is, because I think a Windows update messed with some of my audio settings, so just want to make sure that I have like balanced audio. I could stand to be slightly louder relative to the game. How about... Let's try like that. That might be a little too low for the game volume. I always hate doing this. Can never tell. Alright. That's like in between. Stop giving me conflicting answers. And in my headphones it sounds really loud. Is this the All Melons run of DDLC? Nice meme. I wish it was. I haven't played Melee in like months at this point. Kinda sucks, but I don't know. Yeah, I plan on playing more Yoshi's Story. Especially, yeah, there's like a couple of categories that have been massively optimized since I last played them. Like 30 seconds of time saves. So I definitely want to get back to that. I'm still like, I'm active in the Yoshi's Story speedrunning community, more or less. Like, I'm still like helping out in the Discord server and giving advice to players and stuff like that. I have been doing okay, thank you for asking. I have like, you know, I have good weeks and bad weeks. Sometimes I just like can't get anything done like the whole week and it sucks. So, you know, sometimes the times are more stressful than other times, but we always make it through in the end. Okay. Guess it's about time we get started. How does it feel playing again? I don't know. It's like super normal for me because, I mean, for like the year and a half to 2 years that I was working on this, I just, I was like always having the game open and like playing it basically. So, I don't know, just kind of feels like that. This is where do we leave off? This is the last chapter of the second act, actually. So it's at this point where, like, I kind of start to pull out the stops, and I wanted like everyone in the club to kind of be really uncomfortable with each other, or like mean, and Monica, I wanted Monica to be like very visibly kind of fed up and just wanting things to get to the point. And that also means that the protagonist is not really talking anymore. He might have like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue in this chapter, but that's about it. Because since the protagonist is just a vehicle for like the fantasy fulfillment in the game, for like the girls to fall in love with him, basically. Since that's no longer a factor and the game is more interacting with itself and interacting with the player directly, that means like the protagonist just doesn't really have much dialogue anymore. And it was deliberate for me to try to give him less and less dialogue as the chapters pass in Act 2, for that reason. Thought it was appropriate for things to start off like, because every chapter sort of has, kind of like an opening, and then the exclusive scene, then the poem responses, and then like the closing. And the opening is usually like, it's usually like a fun little interaction where you like learn a little bit more about the characters and stuff like that. But here it's like it opens up and they like immediately start fighting and making you uncomfortable. Like at this point, Monica has already had like a lasting impact on the health of the club. Right, this is something that I actually added in a later update to the game. There was one update where I wanted there to be a little bit more differentiation if you actually go for Natsuki the whole time in Act 2, because all you originally got was like kind of one extra scene with her, but then most of the other stuff was like the same. I wanted the game to punish the player for going for her more. And so if you continually go for her, then the other characters are actually meaner to her. A couple times last chapter and this one. And that's what I did in this playthrough. So yeah, instead of them finishing their conversation, Natsuki just leaves, and this conversation here is slightly altered in order to fit that. Yeah, because like, right here, if you don't go for Natsuki when like, when Monica brings up the festival, that's when she's like, stops herself because she's like, oh yeah, I forgot we like left off on an awkward note, and then Natsuki kind of says like the reassuring stuff, but that just doesn't happen in this route. It's also funny because like Monica is the one who is trying to make Yuri so unlikable by having her give off these like weird obsessive tendencies, but it ends up backfiring because Yuri is just not allowing anyone else to spend time with you. It's probably around here that Monica resolves to do something about the Yuri situation. So since we went for Natsuki, that's the other difference. If you go for Natsuki, you get Natsuki exclusive, then Yuri exclusive 1, then Yuri exclusive 2. If you go for Yuri, then you get Yuri exclusive 1, then Yuri exclusive 2, and then for the third Yuri exclusive, it actually repeats the beginning of Yuri exclusive 2 because each character only has 2 exclusive scenes in the game. And so the kind of glitch that happens if you go for Yuri all 3 times is that like the beginning of exclusive 2 repeats, but then once you reach the point where you go out in the hallway and find her, it diverges and something different happens. And that was pretty fun to do. But in this playthrough, we won't be seeing that. Most of this is also similar to Act 1, except that when the protagonist offers to walk with her, she actually turns him down this time. For obvious reasons. Monica, like, already knows what's up. She's just playing dumb by saying, like, oh, sorry for misunderstanding. I forget if this was added in a patch or if it was just added late in development, where the, what is it, where the music dims when you go out into the hallway. This is interesting. I think I brought it up before just regarding a couple of quotes in the game or things that happen where I forgot to consider that when people are narrating the game out loud, they oftentimes, you know, they narrate like a line of dialogue and are not sure what it means in context until the next line. And so streamers can either misinterpret something or have trouble like pronouncing an onomatopoeia because they're not sure what it is until the following line, which is something that, yeah, I forgot to consider when writing the scenes. I think because when I was when I had that playing in my head, I was kind of thinking like the way that a Japanese visual novel, or I guess a translated Japanese visual novel would do it, and they often just, you know, they have like a huge lexicon of onomatopoeia that they can use that, for the most part, like makes sense in just the context of whatever is going on. But, you know, when we use English phonetics to have like breathing or like, you know, a sound like inhaling through your teeth, it's a lot harder to represent it in a way that like the reader just immediately understands and it needs that context, and so they don't find that out until the next line. My favorite visual novel is Tsukihime. It's not the overall it's not like the overall, I don't know how to put it, like best one that I've read, like production wise and just, you know, quality of writing wise, but I think given that it was my first visual novel, plus the way that the story was very like character oriented and character driven, like those were reasons that it really stuck out to me and meant a lot to me. I played through Fate Stay Night as well, and I thought that was great, but my preference was Tsukihime, because I felt it was like more character focused. I still enjoyed Fate Stay Night very much though. I played through all 3 routes. This was like back in college when I had nothing better to do except fail all my classes. That effect was very fun to design. I think that it would have been really cool to have the text go back. Have the text draw backwards too, where it starts as a complete line and it like undoes itself, which might be possible in Renpai if you really mess with the effects, but I think it would have taken a very long time for me to figure out, and it's pretty sufficient as it is. So this is one of those things where it's like, I think at this point, there are some viewers, especially ones who like spend a lot of time with Yuri, they might have like a hunch that she has issues with self-harm, because it's like kind of lightly referenced a couple other places in the game, but it's one of those instances where I don't think people actually expect the game to show it, and so when the game actually goes there, it's like it has like a greater emotional effect, I guess. I think just because like the art and everything about the scene is like so out of place that it's like very uncomfortable. The music rewinding was also a little bit difficult because I had to there's a second audio track in the game that's like playing in reverse and around twice the speed, and I had to calculate where the position of that audio starts and ends versus like the position of the normal playing forward track, and those calculations were kind of annoying to do. I'm still actually not sure if they're correct. And if you go back into history as well, that entire sequence is not in history either, as if it was like actually rewinded from the game. And all of this is pretty much the same as the dialogue in Act 1, up until you know what. Even the posture joke is still in there. It's so out of place at this point in the game. Yeah, there are always 4 girls. The general plot of the game and like the personality of the girls and stuff was pretty set in stone like really early on. It was so much fun writing these scenes where like the MC is just like like this magical scenario happens around him where he's like in this like romantic or like tense situation with the girl of interest. It was so much fun to do that. Because that's like what the scenes are. Most of them anyway. It's just like this scenario happens to magically happen around him. No, I never call the characters Dokis. For some reason, I didn't consider that this game would end up being more often referred to as Doki Doki, rather than like the full title or DDLC. And I always call it DDLC myself. That's just what it's been for me since the beginning. But I guess that's because in my mind, the phrase Doki Doki was just like a generic onomatopoeia, but for a lot of people, DDLC was like the main context in which they would hear that phrase, and because of that, people got to calling it Doki Doki, which is like a little bit more, I wouldn't say confusing, but like since the phrase itself is like so meaningless, like imagine calling Super Mario Brothers just Super. Be like, yo, you play Super for the Switch? That's kind of what it makes me think of. Which, it would make sense if there was only one, like, Super Mario game, Like people could get away with that, but, that's why it, like, works with DDLC, because there's not a million games with Doki Doki in the title, Unless you count Doki Doki Panic for the Nintendo Famicom. Man. So happy that Donkey gives DDLC Game of the Year every year. At this point in the game, the player knows that it's bad news when the music stops. It's interesting because out of all the things that the game tries to do unexpectedly or tries to break the rules in some way or another, the game does set the expectation that when the music stops, something is going to go down. And that's interesting because, when I see like players react to it, the music stops and like they get really nervous and stuff like that. It's just I don't know. I guess I thought that that specific detail was interesting in contrast to the rest of the game. And that's one of those details that like you could do in multiple ways. The way that you use music as timing in the game, and doing different things with it could have a different effect on different people. So it was fun to see how people reacted to like the music changes in the game. Oh, there's not too much dust. Like you've seen that happen when what is it? When there's like a beam of light coming in like through the window and you can kind of see like the dust catching the light or whatever. That's normal. It was a lot of fun to design this scene as well. I think this was one of the first CGs that I designed actually. And yeah, I was really excited to just take it a step further and have it feel more like a little bit more alive. It always impressed me when you saw kind of those lightly animated CGs in visual novels. I think this scene is also one of the earlier scares that I designed. I remember being like after I would design things like that, I would like take a little recording of it and like show all my friends. I'm like, yo, check this out. Um, because it's so hard to go like such a long time without showing anybody like what you're working on, you know? So I had like my friends and I would like kind of just show off some of the cool stuff in the game. And they would give me feedback on it. And the eyes like you know, I wanted to, you know, kind of mixing the art styles, like having realistic eyes, like that's one thing, but I really wanted to just take it a step further where like the eyes are animated, you know, and the pupils are like moving a little bit like actual human eyes do when you look at them. Because one thing that I try to put emphasis on in this game with regards to the horror elements is not just mismatch in art, but mismatch in animation as well, because you're not used to seeing that much animation in like a static visual novel. And so when there's like unexpectedly an animated element like that, I think it can really get to you. Yeah, before I had all the official art for character portraits, I had placeholder art. It was actually like the character art itself was not really done until like pretty late in development. So I just had placeholder art. First, I used just like very very generic sprites that I got from like an anime character builder. And then later on, I had the artist do rough sketches of the characters and their poses, and that allowed me to actually more accurately construct the scenes because I was able to size them based on like the actual size that would be and things like that. And then it wasn't until much later, or like over time, that I added the final art to the game. But you can get really, really far with just placeholder art. Thank you, Artie Sorrel. It's very brave of you to share that in this chat, but it makes me very happy to hear that, so thank you. Why was Yuri's angry expression not used? There were a couple of facial expressions that there wasn't like a good place to use them in the game. I just used whatever I felt was most natural for the scene, and so if a couple ended up going unused, then that's just how it was. My favorite Yume Nikki room. That is really hard to pick. I really like the area with what is it? The area where you get the witch effect, where there's like all those creepy, faceless, black-haired women with like their hair blowing in the wind, and the music there is like so perfect for that scene. I know most people probably don't know what I'm talking about because if you haven't played Yume Nikki, but yeah, the music in that scene just like sets that atmosphere so incredibly well of you being like outside and it's like windy and just like really. I don't know, unsettling. I really like that area. Did I get scared by my own creepy designs? No, I was never scared by it, but sometimes, like, I forgot that I added a certain effect in the game, and so it, like, startled me when the effect came up because I wasn't expecting it. I think having Natsuki, like, you know, in the final chapters of the game, having her just being the only one who is just completely unaware and just like wants to have a normal club. I think that kind of helps out the game a lot, and it's also very sad, but I'm glad that I did it that way. Because it's like, you know it's bad when it gets to the point where Natsuki has to like come out of her shell, you know, and show her vulnerable side. And the other reason I like to have it is that, like, you know, just at what's the best way to put it? It's like, just as you feel like someone else has a bit of an understanding of what's going on and like what you're going through, like the uncomfortable feeling that you're going through, just when that's made apparent, like, it's just immediately taken away from you. That was fun as well. You know, like, I've seen people sometimes ask developers of, you know, games or like TV shows or whatever, like, they're always asked, like, did you know that this specific thing would like become a meme or like become really popular in the fan community? Like with, I remember in the developer commentary for Portal, one of them brought that up. It's like, did you think that, like, you know, the phrase "the cake is a lie" or like the companion cube, etc., did you think that those would become like so, you know, such a big focus on like the memes in the fan community? And he said that there were things that they kind of expected and things that they didn't expect at all. That's the way it was for DDLC as well. I wasn't sure, like, what the staples would be for each character, like, in the fan community, but I think that just based on the way I designed a couple scenes, I was able to take an educated guess sometimes, and I felt like, I'm trying to remember, it was so long ago at this point, before the game came out, I felt like the phrase "just Monica" was one that would probably be referenced. And of course it has, because it's become one of the probably one of the most important phrases in the game. The music right here is the normal music track. It's not. I don't think it's distorted. You know, I deliberately get a piano note wrong in like that little trill, but that's just because the game does that here and there to sound a little bit sillier. I think aside from the exclusive scene, this is the only line that the MC has in this chapter. I remember going through the chapter and being like, thinking like, all right, I have to keep this one line here because it's like important for the interaction, but the MC was not needed anywhere else for dialogue. Okay, we've breached the PG-13 barrier. Parents' permission now required to watch this stream. That scene was also like really fun to make. I knew going into Act 2 that I wanted Yuri's poems to get like more and more senseless and deranged like over time, until the point where it was just like meaningless scribbles on the paper with like weird stains on it. And Yuri's still like kind of jumping in and out of her like obsession mode, you know? Even that's kind of like an amplified version of her normal personality where, you know, when she's like talking about something she really cares about, she kind of like goes on too much about it, and then she like catches herself, and I'm like, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I was talking too much, or like I wasn't thinking, or something like that, you know? It's like that still happens even when she starts to get like really out there, and it makes you feel really bad for her. When Monika talks about like the issues that Natsuki and Yuri have, you know, like Natsuki's, you know, like family situation, or how she like doesn't get enough to eat, and when Yuri's like self-harm issue, she like this was very difficult territory because it's really difficult to deliberately write a character to be insensitive about certain issues. And I think like I was pretty afraid of doing that, but I knew that since that's the whole point of the game, where Monika is treating it as just a game and the player is treating it as not, like having that dichotomy, it was important to approach it like that, you know? It's like in other video games when you like, you know, just laugh at, you know, other characters dying in funny ways, you know, like doing funny stuff in Grand Theft Auto, for instance. That's what Monika's doing in DDLC, but it's instead of the player going along with it like they would in something like Grand Theft Auto, they're like, I wanted the player to be like, that is horrible, you know, and I want them to be upset with Monica for saying something like that and for not taking it seriously. Like how Monica uses it as ammo to be sassy about the characters is like, you know, like the most despicable thing that you can do. But it's because, you know, she just sees them as meaningless characters, and she's the only one who's not. So it's like okay for her to do something like that because she thinks that you, the player, would just see it the same way. Okay, this piece of dialogue actually had to be different depending on the order in which you do things, because Yuri like takes your poem, so there had to be a little check for that. Monica has to like be like, I guess we won't worry about your poem or whatever. Not that the dialogue is very different if you do Monica's first. So this effect does something different only if you are playing on Windows and if your game is in full screen. If both of those conditions are met, then the game fakes a blue screen. I'm not sure if I can show that off. I think if I go full screen, I'm not sure if the game will still be captured by the stream. I guess I could try it. It's just the wrong size now. Let me see if I can like fit to screen. Okay, so that actually worked. So this is what it looks like. I didn't really care if it was like 100% convincing as a fake blue screen, but I wanted to go lengths to make it as like realistic as possible. So there are a few things that I did. One is the faint like buzzing noise you can hear in the background, because that definitely happens when your computer blue screens while there's sound playing, like during a game or something like that. Or at least that's always what I've heard. The second part of it is the way that the blue screen appears. It's not instantaneous, and it actually draws itself in like 3 chunks, right? That was another very subtle thing that I wanted to do to make it feel more like a real blue screen. So let me just leave full screen, get this back to normal. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted you know, the whole point of this poem is that Monica is actually trying to mess more strongly with the game code, and it obviously does not work in her favor. And regardless of whether or not you get the blue screen visual effect, you know, like something very strange and non-poem-like still happens with the paper. Yeah, I think I was kind of inspired by like arbitrary code execution exploits, which I used for creating 20xxte, which is my melee mod. So that's, you know, it's effectively like, it's the way that you know, certain viruses work. Like if, you know, you open a PDF and that somehow like installs malware on your machine, it uses something called arbitrary code execution, which means that it gives a piece of data to the program that the program's not expecting and doesn't know how to handle it, and so it like kind of overflows, and normally it's supposed to cause the program to crash, but if the data you give it is like perfectly aligned, then you can actually like insert your own code into the program, and cause that code to run. That's just in a nutshell what arbitrary code execution is. But I kind of designed that scene as if Monica was like trying to do that in a way, or at least that was like the inspiration for it. You know, it's very clear that Monica like has a little bit more control over the game, where she doesn't have to literally resort to an arbitrary code execution exploit. But you know, I was just saying that for constructing the scene, that was the inspiration. This is also really fun to do as well. I wanted to, you know, this is again just like the special poem dialogue, but this time there's no text, and it was so much fun watching people like get really nervous when they're just given like a yes or no dialogue box and they don't know like what it does or what it's for. And it's obvious after you click it, but it was just one of those things where it happens like in an unexpected spot, like after you finish the poems, and it's something that you haven't seen before. And I think this is the only one where if you click no, then it shows it to you anyway. I think the others, if you click no, it actually does not show the special poem to you. But almost nobody does that because like they're curious enough to click yes. Since this one has no instructions, like some people do click no because it's almost more like a 50-50 chance, and so that's why I made it show it to you either way. Okay. This poem is pretty self-explanatory. I don't really have much to talk about regarding it. The game has a total of, I think, 10 special poems, and you get 3 random ones every time you play. So everyone gets different ones. And I think that's decided like at the very beginning of your playthrough when you first make a new game. So you can't like, at any point you can't save and load and like get new special poems. I like how in this scene Monica starts off with like her cheery "okay everyone," and then she's immediately just like, alright, let's get this over with. Like she doesn't even care about the game anymore. She just wants to get to the point. And Yuri repeats this phrase in both Act 1 and Act 2. Stagnating air is common foreshadowing that something terrible is about to happen. In Act 1 it's played off kind of like comedically because like nothing truly terrible can happen in like a dating sim like this, but it has a much more sinister meaning, I guess, in Act 2. This is another instance where Monica is being meaner to Natsuki because we selected the Natsuki route during Act 2. I think normally Natsuki proudly says, "I'm going to make cupcakes," and Monica's like, "Yeah, that's fine." But going for Natsuki in Act 2, Monica actually says, "Natsuki can make cupcakes. I know you're at least good at that." Like she's just says this horrible thing to her. And then this is another strong difference between Act 1 and Act 2, where in Act 1, Monica tries to come up with something to do for Yuri, but she has trouble, and then Yuri says, "I'm useless." But in Act 2, Monica doesn't bother. She just says, "It doesn't matter, do whatever you want." And Yuri says, "I'm not useless." And in this act, Yuri comes up with the idea herself, as opposed to Monica coming up with it. Just to put more emphasis on Monica like not really caring about the festival or the club anymore, and just very clearly interested in trying to get closer to you. it was really fun and interesting to just make the characters start swearing during scenes like this. That happens earlier on in the second chapter, like when Natsuki and Yuri get in the argument. But that was when like the game was actually starting to get messed up. Now the state of affairs in the club has gotten bad enough that they're just like doing it in normal arguments. This is a funny line. I'm not abusing my power. She hesitates too because she knows what it means. Or she knows what it means to her anyway. This was another thing that was really fun to design, and was actually something that I wasn't sure if I could make possible in the first place. I had to do some weird trickery with, I think, like creating custom choice boxes that also insert the routine that moves your mouse pointer, and just a weird, interesting technical fact. If I had Renpai move the mouse pointer at 60 frames a second, then your mouse cursor would actually lock up completely, and you would not be able to do anything. I think even if you alt-tabbed out of the game or tried to, like, I think it like wouldn't work. I don't remember, but it actually broke the game, and so I had to make the mouse pointer move it 30 frames a second, so every other frame you have a chance to take control instead of the game of the mouse pointer. That was just a side effect of how the routine works in Renpai for like moving the mouse pointer. It's what he chose. I like how Natsuki and Yuri are like insisting that it's not fair, even though to them like nothing unfair technically happened. They're just like really upset by the situation. And of course the music stops. It's time for things to go down. This dialogue was amusing to write as well, like, because now that Yuri's just completely off the wall, like, she is going to start saying some horrible things as well. Things that nobody should ever say to anyone else, like, in any situation. I think this is also the first time you see her use these eyes in for a sustained period of time. I initially did not want to start using these expressions until this scene, but there were like bits and pieces of scenes earlier on where Yuri's in like her obsession mode, and the only way to fully portray that was to like just use these expressions just a little bit here and there. But yeah, I've played visual novels before where it's only like halfway through the game or in a very specific scene that you see a new character facial expression. And that like always creeped me out, like when it's used for a creepy effect. that's just another interesting thing about visual novels. It's like you learn what all the sprites and expressions look like, and so just all of a sudden, if like a new one hits you, then it's very unsettling, like it doesn't belong after all that time you've spent in the game. I really wanted this scene to be like Yuri in the back of her mind knows that like something is really horribly wrong. In the same way that Natsuki does, right? Just Natsuki's a little bit upfront about it, but Yuri is like only partially in control of herself, basically. I mean, not that Monika's taking direct control of her, of course, but Monika has elevated all of the issues in the game to a point where like Yuri is not fully in control anymore. And I wanted this to be, you know, Yuri's tipping point where this whole time Yuri has been trying to hold back, you know, and, you know, she's slipped through every now and then, but she's always kind of like pulled back at the last minute. But this is the instance where she is not able to do that anymore. Like, the thought is there, but she just completely disregards it now. And, gonna have some more inappropriate dialogue. I love this line. I guess the other thing to comment on in this scene is the music. The confession music was one of the only tracks that had not yet been touched. And so, like, you know, it's almost like the game wants to ruin the emotional attachment you have to each of the tracks in the game, where it's like, you know, this music was used in like some very endearing moments in Act 1, and now when it comes back, it's like when these horrible things are happening and you're like really uncomfortable, it like taints your emotional memory of the track. And when you hear the track in the future, you might be thinking about both of those things instead of just the nice times. Most people probably know already, but the exact same thing happens whether you say yes or no. That was like very deliberate, because the point is like, you know, if you say no, then Yuri does it in like, you know, maybe the inability to get the thing that she wants. And when you say yes, it's either her, you know, maybe it's like her self-harm tendencies being pushed past the breaking point. But aside from that, another way that I like to think about it is Yuri's last-ditch effort to stop herself from doing something horrible. You know, like she, it's gotten so hopeless that it's the only way that she can stop herself. That's another way that I like to think about it. You know, that it can be interpreted that way, or it can be interpreted as like her excitement just gets the best of her. I'm probably going to be rewinding and playing this scene like a few times as I talk about it. Yeah, so this scene, there was another instance where I was talking about like the inappropriate use of animation in a visual novel. I wanted this to be like the scene that kind of felt like things like something live action was going on without the player doing anything, you know? I think the entire rest of the game, things only happen one element at a time as you click your mouse for the most part, you know? Sometimes something happens where you like don't click your mouse, but it's usually just like advances one more piece of dialogue. This is really the only instance where an entire sequence of events occurs just without the player having control. And that's the way that I wanted to design sort of like this climax, if that's what you want to call it. And I spent a long time like talking to the artists about like, you know, these are the portraits I need from the character in order for this sequence of events to happen. And like this is, you know, this is the way that pictures are going to be displayed, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this like this is how the scene is going to work. And so I made sure that all of the like adjustments to the character portrait like worked out in order to make that scene happen. I also had some fun like coding the particle effects for the blood, which is something that you also rarely or almost never see throughout the rest of the game, which makes the scene feel like more animated as well. And it was fun matching it up with the sound effects. I think it was only in the most recent patch that there were certain timing precise events in the game that like if your computer if you didn't have like a really powerful computer, then the visual effects would actually lag behind the sound a little bit, because instead of using proper clock-based timers, I was just using pause intervals that didn't take the clock into consideration. So it was only in a recent update that I kind of just coded my own little pause interval that uses the clock instead of like a duration of time for the pause. And so even if your computer is lagging, the different pictures still show in tandem with the audio properly. Because yeah, like you can go and watch like a lot of playthroughs on YouTube and stuff like that where the stab sound effect happens slightly before she actually moves the knife. So that's something that I just wanted to correct. The thing about her not having a designer knife was just a like an error with the art. I think I didn't give explicit enough instructions on like what the knife should look like and stuff like that. So it ended up being just the way that it is. This scene I was so excited to make from like a pretty early point in development. I had this scene in mind. I was like, you know, I was thinking like Yuri's going to like stab herself and she's going to die, and the game script is going to be so broken that like you just can't advance, and you have to wait through the weekend like with her corpse basically, and like watch as the state of her corpse changes as the days pass, which is like so disgusting and like horrible. But it just seemed like such a good idea. So I was like really excited about that for such a long time, and to see how people react to it, and hoping that people don't just like try clicking through the text like this, which like actually a lot of people did. They just kept on clicking, so it ended up taking a while. That's not necessarily a bad thing, you know, like that's just the way that those players experience the game. If they still had a good experience with it, then that's great. But there were many ways to skip this. The most obvious being the skip button, which, oh man, like I watched so many Twitch streams where the streamer like got to this point and the chat just started spamming like press skip, you know, which I'm not a fan of, because I don't know, I don't like backseat gaming, especially with a game like this. The point of the game is for everyone to experience it in their own way, and other players don't have to like force their own experience on one given player, especially in a scene like this where there are many ways to figure out how to make this part go faster. And I will show you some of them now. Here's one. You can try loading your game. That happens. Here's one that I least often see, is going back to the main menu. Watch this. So all of these things cause one day cycle to advance, and so it's always immediately obvious when you do one of those things that something new is happening as you do it, and that is encouraging the player to just do that more. And so in order to like, it encourages them to keep on doing that in order to like make more changes in the game, make more time pass. So you can do those things instead of clicking through the text or clicking the skip button. Yeah, earlier on in development, I initially had it so those different actions, instead of just advancing to the next day cycle, they advanced X amount of dialogue boxes later. But I wanted it to be immediately clear that what you just did had an effect on the game, because I didn't want a player to feel truly lost during this part. And then the other one, which I won't show just because I don't know if it'll mess up my stream overlay. If you quit and restart the game, it immediately puts you back into this scene, and that also advances one day cycle. So you can even get past this by constantly quitting and restarting the game to make time pass. Oh, and this number here is just because I have developer mode turned on, and it shows you like the number of dialogue boxes in that you are, which just helps me design the scene. I helped a lot with the art direction in this scene too, like the way that Yuri's the specific features of her body and like the blood and stuff that change over time. I remember kind of giving direction on like, you know, like this is kind of how like her eyes and her skin like should look each day. And like it's the third day that I specifically asked for like her smile to disappear. And I think at this point, since the save game controls are gone, can you actually hit escape? You can't even hit escape here to go to the menu. I remember putting a line of code in RenPy where it checks if the quick menu is active, and if the quick menu is not active, then it does not let you go into the menu. And so that allowed me to just exhibit a little more control over the game. I got it. Oh my god. yeah, while I was making this game, the whole point of the game is that it removes control from the player in various instances. And the developer of Ren'Py, the game engine that I use, was really against that. Many of his design decisions in the Ren'Py engine were specifically built so that the player never loses control of the game, because he's against that from like a game design standpoint, like for visual novels anyway. Because he didn't want people to make like, you know, these really long like cutscenes in visual novels they have to like sit through like unskippable text. He always wanted players to have control of their reading experience, which makes a lot of sense for traditional visual novels, but the whole point of this game was to like go completely against that. And so I like in order to try to remove control from the player, I dug up these like ridiculously deprecated and archaic variables that were still like just hanging around in the Ren'Py engine but weren't being used for anything. You know, that were like variables regarding mouse clicks and game pauses and stuff like that. And when they weren't working as I expected, just based on the description of the variable, I would open up like a bug report or like a GitHub issue about it. And I could tell that Tom, the developer, was probably kind of annoyed because like this was some random variable that was like 4 years old that like nobody should be using anymore. And here I am like submitting a bug report saying it's not working properly. And he's just like, look, man, you know, that stopped being used like 4 years ago, and like it's not supposed to serve that purpose. But somehow, out of everything that I did in the game, I only needed to change one line of code in the Ren'Py engine. Everything else I was able to do just with deprecated variables and like stuff in the engine to like work around his desires to keep the player in control. And the one line of code that I changed was to make Monica's dialogue in Act 3 not skippable by clicking your mouse. That was the one thing that Ren'Py actually has no way of doing out of the box, even with deprecated variables. I had to change a line of code in order to allow that. At this point, the way the scene is designed is to have not just no MC dialogue, but have very little narration dialogue as well, such as just saying, like, Natsuki runs away. And of course Monica just like laughs at the scene. This I added when she says, wait, were you here the entire weekend? I think I wanted to make it clear to players that what they just did and the reason the festival's happening is that they were in the classroom for the whole weekend, and that's why the day-night cycles were passing, because that was like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday going by. And then finally she references the script, the game script. Must have been pretty boring. And this is the first time the command prompt appears as well. I had a little bit of trouble designing the command prompt. When text is actually being typed, the text cursor disappears, and that's because there's a routine for text being typed character by character, and of course it's the routine that's used for the normal game dialogue when the text appears like one character at a time. Initially, I wrote my own routine for text to appear character by character because I forgot or didn't consider that I could use this one. And when I wrote my own routine for it, it basically involved taking the text string and constantly like displaying a new string, like adding one additional character to the string, and then adding the cursor at the end, and then displaying it, and doing that over and over to make the text appear character by character. But the issue was, I think the way Ren'Py renders text is that it basically like renders it to a texture, and then it displays the texture. And there were performance issues when you try to display that many textures very rapidly. And so I didn't have much control over the speed of the text, and it was inconsistent depending on the computer that you played it on. And then I later got the idea to use this routine for it. But the side effect of that is that I can't have the cursor at the end of the text, or at least I can't easily. I think with some really, really clever coding, you'd be able to do something like that, but it would just be like a lot of effort. And I figured for just the tiniest little detail, it wouldn't be worth like, really slaving over like that. But aside from that, the command prompt was pretty fun to make. Like there's, like actually a line history area. It accepts all the normal functions of like giving it a command and giving it the output, and like it kind of just does everything itself. Because I knew that I was going to be using it several times in the game, and so I wanted to have just kind of standard functions for it. Sorry, I'm getting like pretty technically into development, but I don't know. Since I'm just talking about whatever I want to talk about anyway, it's just like what came to mind. And of course, this was fun now that Natsuki's deleted. Her name is garbled like Sayuri's was at the beginning of Act 2. I thought it would just be hilarious for, like, after all of that happened, Monika's just like, wait, I want to have one of these cupcakes first. These are the best. Alright, we're home, baby. Welcome to Act 3. Since I'm in developer mode, the text here will behave like normal text instead of the special, like, Act 3 text that goes more slowly and forces you to read every line. Like, I can actually click through it like normal text. I guess there's quite a bit to talk about with this scene in general. I had like a really strong image of the composition of the scene. You know, the way that Monika would be front and center, like across from you and just like staring at you. And in the background there would be like, outside of the windows, it would be like the universe has fallen apart more or less. It was just a matter of like designing all of those effects, which was quite difficult. Ren'Py does not make this kind of thing easy. I had to like mess with several like mask layers, like alpha mask and color mask layers, in order to make this possible. I spent a really long time on that, and being able to kind of like tweak a value so that when it brightens up, the flames kind of like come in and then they go out again. I spent such a long time on that because, again, it's the type of visual effect or animation that you just haven't seen in the rest of the game. And so when it's there, it has like more of a standout effect. So I wanted to spend a really long time on that. And even like the highlights on the Monika in the classroom, and this little piece of glare like brightens as the clouds brighten like that. So that's like all stuff that I spent a very long time getting to a satisfactory point. One issue is that Ren'Py for Mac is, I guess, not nearly as optimized as for PC. I'm not sure why, but Ren'Py for Mac really struggles with rendering this. I guess the hardware acceleration isn't as good, and so like if you play on a Mac, like it causes your fans to spin up, and your computer gets hot because it's like really pushing your CPU to make that happen. which I also didn't know until like later on. I think I didn't know that until after release, actually, because I didn't really have a good way of fully testing on Mac. Except like borrowing someone's Mac and making sure the game didn't break at any point. Alright, let's move on. Yeah, so Monica, of course, treats this as though the game restarted a third time, which it technically did, and this is what we're left with. So she's like, you know, we can skip over the introduction at this point. Okay, so... This is interesting because, as some of you may know, if you put your in-game name as something different from your actual name, then Monica actually calls you out, and she says, or do you actually go by, like, real name? That only happens in a couple of scenarios. One, your name has to be different from your Windows login username, which is what she uses to call you out. So that you may not have known. Some people thought that she like took your Steam username or something like that, but she actually takes your Windows login username, which is very easy to get just from pulling like a Windows environment variable. Which is also funny because some people who like buy a laptop from the store or whatever, like their username is like admin or user or something like that. So she's like, or do you actually go by user? Or do you actually go by admin or like something silly like that? I knew that would happen to some people, but it's one of those things where even if it was successful on like 1 in 10 people, it still would have been worth it. Because it's just, that's one of the things that I think you last expect the game to do, is to actually somehow know your real name. And so I was I was really excited to see that actually work on people, even if it was a small amount of people. And the other reason I wanted to do that was, you know, this is the point where like Monica has fully left the game, and she is like, you know, she's interacting directly with you, and I think breaking down those final barriers between you and the game was something that I really wanted to try to do. That's the whole point of Act 3, where, you know, Monica's talking to you now, and the stuff that she talks about is like stuff that pertains to real life. I designed most of her monologues to make you feel uncomfortable in some way or another, because her final act of leaving the game is in making you think uncomfortable thoughts about yourself and your own life. Which we'll see later with some of her dialogue. And of course, since my in-game name is Dan and my Windows username is Dan, she doesn't call that out. But the other reason that she doesn't call it out is I'm live streaming, and if you were live streaming this game, she detects like your running processes, and if it detects OBS or XSplit or some others that I added later on, then she does not call out your real name, because there are many live streamers out there who do not share their real name, and it is very unfair to not warn the broadcaster about that sort of breach of privacy. There are like, you know, there are just a few, a few just kind of fringe cases where that doesn't work, because some really professional streamers, they have the stream software on another computer, and the one that they're playing on is just like outputting the video to the other computer, and then Monica can't detect the streaming software because it's not running on the computer that they're playing the game on. So that's one instance. Or if they're using some obscure streaming software and the name of the exe doesn't get picked up, stuff like that. So it can happen, and I recognize that, but I wanted to like make it as unlikely as possible for it to happen, so that it like didn't end up being an issue. Even though it's just like first name most of the time, I just wanted to play it safe. This is where Monica starts just giving the explanation of everything that she knows. This was fun too. I even told you right on the game's download page, which is true. If you go to the download page, she calls it a game, which is just one of those details where like I wanted it to sort of come full circle. Like the game started before you even started playing the game. This monologue was actually like a little bit difficult to write because when it's just like a long monologue and it's in visual novel style where like basically only one sentence is appearing at a time, pacing it and like getting the correct information in the correct order and like keeping the mood with like how Monica's feeling about everything, it actually felt like kind of difficult to do. So I think that's kind of why she jumps back and forth between explaining things about the game and her own emotions, because I think I was just trying to keep the pacing balanced between the two. I realized that you have the same perspective as I do, that it's all just some game, and I knew you would get over it. That's like the key element where she's wrong, which I've of course brought up a little bit earlier as well, but here she basically like spells it out. I decided there's like, as far as like weird effects and stuff go, like, you know, for the game there wasn't all that much to do at this point except let the player click on yes. You know, it's like Monica knows that there's no other option, so you're gonna do it unless you like quit the game. That was the other thing. I was really considering the idea of Monica trying to prevent you from quitting the game, but that was just one of those things where I felt like I should not be approaching that territory because that could like cause problems, you know. I can't literally take control away from the player. They have to be able to quit the game and like return to normal life, and the game cannot interfere with anything in their normal life. So that's why, like, you know, I mean, this is a piece of computer software. You can do like literally anything with it as long as the player grants like permissions to do so, you know. You can put files anywhere you want. Like I could have put files on the desktop. I could have like done all kinds of weird stuff, but that was just, you know, you can like read the registry. I think anyway. That was just territory that I did not want to get into because it's that's when it's like really starting to approach malware territory. From a design standpoint, the game needed to be contained within itself, and at the very outermost layer of the Windows application, the player needs to be able to quit and like regain control over their computer. So that's the line I did not cross. This is where she spells out like the character folder in the game directory. It was really, really hard to decide how much hinting I should give to the player about like what to do, because there is such a wide range of like the types of players that will be playing this game. You know, lots of very technical people are going to be playing the game, but then lots of very non-technical people are going to be playing. And in order to make sure that everybody can figure out what to do, like, you had to get pretty obvious. So yeah, it would have been fun to do this, have like this elaborate ARG type thing set up that made it more difficult to figure out exactly what to do, or have it more subtle. Like, that would be one approach, but keeping the audience in mind, I opted to like make sure that everyone at least knew how to finish the game, or at least the majority of people. You can't really get like 100%, but like, you know, 99.9% maybe would be good. For the rest of the people, they can like look it up, you know. But yeah, that's kind of why she goes on about it. Like, you know, imagine if you could delete your own existence with the click of a button. On the plus side, it gave me an easy out if things didn't go my way. So she's already like indirectly implying that she can be deleted in order to remove her from the game. Totono was a game where I was only made aware of its existence after I was already working on the DLC. But it's not surprising that, like, you know, other visual novels have done at least something similar. You know, it's like, it's not the most like unique and creative idea in the world to have, like, you know, a dating sim character break the fourth wall or whatever. And this is the last poem minigame. Not really all that much to say about this, I guess. Except sometimes you get Monka S. But actually, I just, you know, I just had a little piece of code, like, generate these on the fly. Like, randomly deciding if the letter should be, like, a letter in the word Monica, or if it should be replaced with, like, a random symbol. And of course, you finally see Monica's sticker. The other sticker of her bouncing up and down does not appear in the game at all. I'm pretty sure. It might appear off screen at the end of Act 3, but you never actually like really see that in the game. But it's still in the game files. I just didn't use it. I preferred her to not bounce here because a lot of people would just be like, you know, quickly clicking through these, and it would be very strange to see her just like, I don't know, bounce to that. I thought it would have more of an effect if there was no sound when you clicked on these, and if she like didn't react to it. And of course, this is Monica's last poem. I kind of yeah, it's sort of designed as like a little conclusion to her. All of her other poems are like about the game anyway, or about the player, and so her last poem is like the happy end to like this little saga that she was writing in her previous poems. And this is another instance where I actually wanted to reference the lyrics to Your Reality with In a World of Infinite Choices, Behold This Special Day. I just thought that would be fun to, yeah, fun to have a little reference there, like it was on her mind when she wrote this poem. Now she talks a little bit about her poems. I didn't want to ruin the game or anything. You might have even deleted my character file. So of course this is where her stream detection comes into play. This is the one scene where I was like, let's just have some fun with streamers, you know? Like the rest of the game, I very rarely thought about how it would like play out on a live stream. That was like not a priority of mine at all when making the game, but this was like the one thing where I'm like, this is like a shout out to streamers and let's do something fun with them. It's funny, the timing was actually off a little bit because I'm in developer mode and the text is going faster than it's supposed to during this scene. So the "Did I scare you" text appeared like before it actually did the jump scare. Now that I don't need to play again. There's nothing interesting about that visual effect. It's just a like an edited version of this image overlaid on top of the original image. This is another reference to the lyrics to Your Reality. It's when you're here, everything that we do is fun for them anyway. It's looser. I guess it's looser. It's not. It's less exact, but I had that line in mind, I think, when I wrote this piece of dialogue. So this is where her actual monologues start. There's a lot of weird and interesting stuff that went into the code for this. With the amount of time that you had to wait for the next monologue, I wanted that to be randomized. I needed to make sure that if you quit and restarted the game, it like kept track of your monologue progress. Make sure that she doesn't repeat any monologues until she exhausts all of them. So a lot of stuff like that, I had to pay attention to exactly when certain variables would get set and things like that. I think in developer mode I can click to skip this pause here. So, oh, I can't. That's funny. I think that's because of a recent code update that I did, which changed the way that the pauses work here. Oh, maybe it did work. Oh yeah, that's right. Because earlier on, like in previous game updates, it would be one long pause, like one 30-second pause or 25-second pause or whatever. But I changed that because I wanted the game to check for her character file deletion at 5-second intervals. And so now instead of doing one 30-second pause, it does like 6 5-second pauses and checks her character file every 5 seconds. So it looks the exact same to the player, except it is more responsive when you delete her character file, because you don't have to like wait the full 30 seconds for her to talk again before the game responds to deleting it. It was just a very minor quality of life improvement that I added post-release. The other thing about her monologues is I added a bunch more of her monologues, like in a later game update, because I underestimated the amount of people who actually liked spending time on this screen with Monica, and so basically just for them I added a few more pieces of a few more monologues of hers, and the other thing is that to go along with that, most of what she had to say was like mean or depressing or anxiety inducing in some way. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so I wanted to I just wanted to give her some nicer things to say, just because of that perspective that people had on her, where they actually liked being in the classroom with her. So she has like 50 something possible monologues. I like how we got this one because it's about depression. I think I wanted to this game is fairly in touch with like mental health issues, just in like the non-conventional way of making you really uncomfortable regarding it, instead of kind of like tiptoeing around it, or being nice about it, because like I said earlier, Monica is like horrible when she talks about like the other characters' mental health issues, and I wanted I wanted a monologue that raised awareness for it in a more positive light, I think, and when it comes down to it, it's not like Monica is a horrible person. She, I think she's a very considerate person and is always thinking about other people, but when those people are not real and it's just a game, and she's effectively being tortured by being trapped in the game, she starts taking really drastic measures, and that gets to her. But I felt that it was really important for people who cared a lot about like Sayori, or people who related to her, to have a monologue like this. I'll go. I'm not gonna go through every single monologue, but I'll go through a few of them. One thing that I actually wanted to show off, which some people might not be aware of, I think this works in, what the heck is this? Did I add that when I was testing something? I must have added that when I was like testing out stuff with the menus. I have no idea. I'm guessing that. Oh my god! Look, you made me crash the game. And now it's giving me a different piece of dialogue. So yeah, this is an effect that not everyone discovered, and I think it should work. But yeah, so if you click on skip, she actually calls you out for trying to fast forward. And that was like another thing that was just a lot of fun to make. And then she just returns to the previous dialogue that she was talking about. Yeah, so that was really fun to do. And now even having this option enabled, the skip button is permanently off. It's funny because I think when I was having a friend playtest before release, he actually got through most of her dialogue by abusing the skip mechanic, because for one, skip did not get permanently disabled, and two, instead of returning to the thing that she was talking about, she moved on to the next dialogue topic, and the one that she was like previously talking about got marked as red. So before release, I corrected that like potential abuse mechanic. Make sure there's like actually zero way of skipping this. This one was fun to write. She's just like calling out the weebs. I feel a little insecure because you're playing this game in the first place. Dang, dude. But I talked about this in one of the earlier streams. A really strong theme in this game being just respecting people for like whatever they're into, and that it's never worth and it's never right to look down upon someone for the things that they're into, because as long as they're enjoying themselves, then like you shouldn't feel the need to take that happiness away from them, or feel superior to someone because you enjoy something different from them. That was like quite a strong theme in this game, especially between Natsuki and Yuri. It was about like how each of them feel that way, and then they sort of like come to terms with each other's interests by the end. But another big reason that theme exists in this game is to comment on the game itself and the person playing the game, because I've talked about this before, but a lot of people who play this game are people who like to make fun of anime and make fun of dating sims and things like that. Like some people do it just tongue-in-cheek, like if you're actually into anime, and it is like a meme to make fun of that stuff, but it's different for someone who actually looks down upon and ridicules visual novels or like dating sims or the people who play them, like genuinely ridicules it. And I guess I wanted to make the point in this game, and I think even one of Monica's dialogue choices talks about it too, that it's just like, like if people get enjoyment, and if it makes them feel happy to become attached to like fictional characters, then what's wrong with that? It's what they enjoy, and it's worth respecting. Now this is where she calls out like the game taking place in fake Japan. That was deliberate too, for me to like be like the low-budget Western visual novel that doesn't understand enough about Japan to like literally say that it takes place in Japan, but like since Japanese visual novels are all the developer knows, like everything just kind of has hints of Japan in it, because that's like how they know how to construct the story. So it was kind of fun to like point that out as well. I'll probably be deleting her soon. I'm not gonna like go through all of the monologues. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting phenomenon. It seems like, especially through adolescence, every like couple of years, you look back at like 2 years ago and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe like I was that way. Like I can't believe I was that person, It's like such a period of rapid change that like you're not able to look 2 years into the future and like look back at your behavior and change your mind about it. She has a lot of monologues that are like a tad what's the best way to put it, like philosophical, not like intellectual philosophical, but I mean like they touch upon like different philosophies about life and the universe and whatever. And this one was a fun and interesting contradiction to play with because like her the dichotomy between like being vegetarian but also not really caring about the killing animals part, I just thought that would like be interesting food for thought, no pun intended. Just like a different angle on it, I wanted the whole point of Act 3 to be Monica putting strange and sometimes uncomfortable ideas into the player's head, making them feel uncomfortable about certain things, things where you're like, well, like you're not wrong, but that's so far removed from the way things that actually worked that like the way things actually work that like I don't want to think about it, that sort of thing. This was very fun to add as well. And this was also like pretty relevant to the game, like with kind of the stuff that I was talking about before, like respecting other people's opinions or listening to the way that Natsuki and Yuri argue with each other. This whole monologue is about using subjective language. When using objective language by saying something is bad, or it did X poorly, or it's gross. Say you don't like a certain food, for instance. The phrase, even if you say, I think it's gross, or my opinion is that it's gross, that's still using objective language, because you are commenting on the objective state of the item that you're talking about. Simply by saying I think or my opinion doesn't make that language subjective. And when you are using objective language, the other person with a differing opinion can feel personally attacked, because you are making a statement about the objective state of the thing. What's the best way to put it? And so it makes them feel as though you're trying to invalidate their opinion, because regardless of what they think, this is how it is. That's like, I guess that's, it's not like really over, like saying that you think a food is gross, for instance, like that's not really as strong as like a lot of other, opinions where you use objective language about things. But I think that's the way that people react to it, and that's why people can get really defensive, or like arguments can get heated, because I think it's a result of using objective language. It's the difference between it's the difference between both of you like trying to state something as fact and that the other person is like wrong for having their opinion, versus putting it on the table as information to share. So not liking a certain food, like you could say I don't like it, but then that doesn't take it far enough, because people could say I don't like it because I think it's gross. You could say that kind of flavor doesn't appeal to me, or it's just not my taste, things like that. I think that's the same with like movies and games and things like that. You could say that like I think the plot like was weak in that movie and I didn't like it. And someone else could be like, well, I thought the plot was like really awesome, and there you have the dichotomy, and people start getting defensive, as opposed to saying like, I wasn't a fan of the way that the plot progressed. That's introducing a point in conversation, because then you can actually start talking about the plot, and why one person liked it and why one person didn't like it, and like what elements are causing that dichotomy, and that provides an informative discussion, as opposed to saying, as opposed to using objective language. That was like a really long personal tangent, but it's something that, I don't know. I guess it's because it's something that I try to closely like observe and consider on like a daily basis. In both the way that I personally come across and the way that I see others come across in conversation, and in a social and political climate that is as turbulent as it is today, I think it can go a long way to use subjective language to get ideas on the table, and use that to respectfully inform other people and respectfully inform yourself about other people's opinions. That defensive barrier and the objective language, I think, is partially what causes people to shut down and not want to listen to the other side, because you always feel personally attacked when talking about those things. So that's where I think using subjective language can go a really long way. All right, let's delete Monica. Where the heck? Okay, here we go. Yeah, apologies again for that long tangent, but I don't know. I'm like Yuri. If there's something that I care really strongly about or feel passionate about, I just tend to like go on and on about it, you know? And when I'm on a live stream where I can't read the body language and responses of the person on the other side, then it's like harder for me to find a stopping point. Yeah. So this is, you know, after you delete her, it's like the whole universe just like falls apart. It's like it can't be held together anymore. In context of the game, it doesn't make much sense for her to be like banging on the screen like that, you know, because that's not exactly the way that she's interacting with the game. But for the sake of, like, I really wanted her to be able to express her, like, her rage. So that's why I had that effect. And yeah, that's one of the I guess you could say game design shortcomings is that if you put her back, what is it? There, she tries twice to search for her character file, and both times it says it's not found. If you put her back, then like it's still gonna say not found if she searches for it. So I ultimately just decided, like, once you trigger the end game, I don't really want to work out the use cases or the cases where like that can be undone, you know. I want the player to go through like the consequences of what they just did. This was also interesting to write. The way that she says, like, you win and you can stop playing. I really wanted through this scene, I wanted Monica to use like language that you haven't heard her use before, because for the majority of the game she's like really keeping it together. It's only like the last chapter of Act 3 where she like starts to become visibly frustrated, but she is never like furious, you know, or like truly disgusted. And that's the sort of language that she's using during this scene. Because I wanted the weight of what the player did to, you know, she is trying to make that sink in. I always wondered if people would actually quit the game after she said goodbye. I know it's like a really short waiting interval, and I think most people are trying other ways to interact with the game during that time. I think it's like 10 seconds. So I think very few people are actually going to like quit the game. But if you do quit the game during that period of time and you start the game back up, then you just get a black screen again for 10 seconds. And once you wait through those 10 seconds, this comes up. then she starts feeling remorse. This is another instance where that little piano in the background uses the same rhythm and general note progression as in the poem minigame, but the notes are not the exact same. But I was hoping that it was enough of a shared motif to throw back to that anyway. How did it feel writing this scene? Yeah, there were certain heavy-hitting scenes that like I at least I felt like emotional when I was writing it, especially like Sayori's confession scenes. I think the line where I felt most emotional when I was writing this was this one when she says, "And I love the literature club." I really did love the literature club. That was the line that helped me most like get, like feel that sort of empathy with her. That helped me through the scene. I'm sorry to hear that, Crazy Draken. Yeah, the help button in the game is one element that I never actually messed with. But it's funny you say that because early in early playtesting, there were a couple of people who were very technically minded people who after Sayori died and the game like glitched up, they thought that the game was actually bugging out, and so they like reinstalled the game and just started over. Yeah, so Monika's gone now and everyone else is back. There is actually one little Easter egg. I think I added this after release, like in a later update. But let's see. If you choose right now to put Monika's character file back in the characters folder, now is when you get a special little acknowledgement when you hit new game. And then she just like re-deletes her character file. So this choice of dialogue in this scene, the way I wrote this dialogue is, what is it? The very beginning of the game in Act 1 starts off with Sayori, shouting at you. Act 2 starts off with this line, "It's an ordinary school day like any other." So by the time the game resets itself, I wanted there to be like just a tiny bit of uncertainty about Sayori, like you have to go through a few lines of dialogue before she suddenly appears and you feel your heart lift that she's back. Now she's like waking up on time. Which, after the confession scenes in Act 1, we know means a lot more than what it initially did at the beginning of the game. And, like, the MC is still kind of, like, blissfully unaware. He's like, oh, whatever, like, you know. Yeah, good for you, you're, like, waking up on time. Yeah, I'm proud of you. But this is also the timeline where MC is like not as much of a jerk as like he normally is to Sayori, because like he actually goes out of his way to like join her club and everything. He's like, I feel like I should do something special for her. For once. The other thing about this was I really wanted to have enough unique dialogue in this epilogue to like make it worth like going through and paying attention to, because there are a lot of people who like kind of rapidly click through it because it would be the third time that they're reading it, because like it's the third time the game has like restarted to this opening. So I wanted to try to differentiate it enough, like from the beginning and through the dialogue here, to at least help engage people who care. You know, and of course, even Natsuki and Yuri are nicer to you from like the moment that you walk in. So maybe that's just a side effect of Sayori being the club president. Who knows? And by coincidence, Natsuki made the cupcakes. Let's see, this dialogue is the same. The only modifications were, of course, Monica not talking in these scenes. Let's see. This is also written a little bit different right here. She doesn't say, it's not like I made them for you or anything, because she didn't make them for you. In the other timeline, she made cupcakes because Sayori devilishly said that they had a new member, so Natsuki made cupcakes, and then she lured you with the cupcakes. In this, the cupcakes are a coincidence, so she says something different. And it also gave a chance for Natsuki to use her little catchphrase, I'm a pro. Which, like, I don't really hear people reference that, but she does say it quite a few times throughout the game. Not as much as Monica says, like, okay, everyone, for instance. But yeah, she does say that quite a few times. This is just about the same, except I think now it's like Natsuki who says this to her instead of Monica. This is about the same, except that she does not mention here that she likes horror. So that is, yeah, three different little changes for that. The first one, she says she likes horror, and Monica says, I wouldn't expect that from you. Then in Act 2, and she says it, Monica says, oh, I would expect that from you. And now finally she just doesn't bring up the fact that she likes horror. And this is where the dialogue diverges, because this is where Natsuki and Yuri get into a little conversation. This extremely cute conversation about how they convince each other to try out their own interests. Thanks to Sayori, of course, because Sayori is amazing at helping everyone get along and conflict resolution. You're right as usual, President. And even here, Yuri is still called out for disrespecting Natsuki's interests. She's like, I have to read manga? Natsuki's like, come on. I said I was gonna read books, so, like, you know, it's hurtful that you're treating it this way when it's something I care so much about. And Yuri corrects herself. This scene warms my heart so much after all the arguing that they did through Act 2. I really wanted to give the two of them that sort of happy ending. I think this was also a change I made in a future update where if you actually turned on skip unseen text and you skipped through all of that, skip would automatically disable here, because someone could actually inadvertently skip through the entire end of the game if they just let the skip run and not stop it in time. So that's just another minor quality of life improvement. And the music stops, of course. The player's already been conditioned to feel uncomfortable when that happens, but who knows, maybe at this point, like, we've had such a happy epilogue that they can't possibly think that anything more could go wrong. Even this is, like, ambiguously innocuous. When she says the truth is I already knew you were going to, she might mean, like, oh, I don't know, like maybe you accidentally slipped up somehow, or maybe she had faith in you that, like, you were going to do that for her. But those hopes, of course, get dashed very quickly. And here we are again. F. I think this was really just the type of game where it would not have had the same effect, or the effect that I wanted to go for, if I gave it a truly happy ending. And it wouldn't be worth giving it a happy ending because Monica's gone, you know, because she's not like, you know, it's not a black and white picture with her as an antagonist. So I think it's truly a situation where there isn't a true happiness for the club. And if you can't have an ending where everyone can be happy, then you just shouldn't have an ending at all. Just, you know, delete everything. That's your only escape. All right. Are you ready for the final stretch?
Can you hear me? Hi, it's me. So you know how I've been like practicing piano and stuff, and not really any good at it yet, like at all. But I wrote you a song, and I was kind of hoping that I could show it to you because I worked really, really hard on it. So yeah. Every day I imagine a future where I can be with you. In my hand is a pen that will write a poem of me and you. The ink flows down into a dark puddle. Just move your hand right the way into his heart. But in this world of infinite choices, what will it take just to find that special day? What will it take just to find that special day? Have I found everybody a fun assignment to do today? When you're here, everything that we do is fun for them anyway. When I can't even read my own feelings, what good are words when a smile says it all? And if this world won't write me an ending, what will it take just for me to have it all? Does my pen only write bitter words for those who are dear to me? Is it love if I take you, or is it love if I set you free? The ink flows down into a dark puddle. How can I write love into reality if I can't hear the sound of your heartbeat? What do you call love in your reality? And in your reality, if I don't know how to love you, I'll leave you be.
All right, we're back. I might actually go back and play that again so I can talk about it while it's running. Because there's a lot of stuff about the song, the design of the end credit sequence, all of that stuff. Also, I was for some reason when games quit themselves, it's like just I don't know. It's like the tiniest bit creepy, and I thought that it was such an appropriate way of like just ending the game. The game quits itself after everything gets deleted. And then, of course, as you know, if you've played it, upon restarting the game, it just takes you back to this screen. Yeah, I thought that, like, this was the just the best way to tie all the loose ends in the game. Like, if the ending is not going to be like a happy ending, then this is the closest you can get. Like, between the letter and the end credit song, it's the closest that you can get to having some kind of conclusion. Let me see if I can still use developer mode to rewind. No, I can't. Not at this point. So I think... let me think. How do I... So if I... Dang, I have to check the game code real quick to make sure I can reverse this and watch the end credits again. Do that, and then let's why can't I make the console disappear? It must have been... Oh, it's probably because I deleted all the key bindings. Well, let me see if I could just... I still can't... I can't quit the game now because the console's in the way. Oh, man. And I was just saying that you can't take control away from the player. That's funny. But this is obviously not something that's supposed to happen in the actual game. So let me just go ahead and end this task. Oh, I ended the wrong task. Dang it. There we go. Okay. Now let's bring this back. I made this a lot harder than it needed to be. Yeah, we're back. Let's do it all again. I talked about this in a previous stream, but I knew that the moment Monica's voice came in, so many people would be like, wow, that's not how I imagined her voice. Because that's just what happens when you have when you invent a character's voice and have it in your head all this time, and then all of a sudden, like, you hear them talk, you're like, that is not what I imagined. So I had to weigh that against the, the potential positive impact of having her talk at the end. And I decided that outweighed the potential negative of, like, people not liking the way that she sounded. So I decided to do that. Yeah, I really wanted I wanted her voice to be introduced to you like before the actual song, you know. So I had that little segment of her like, you know, kind of sounds like a recording of some sort, of her like going over to the piano and saying that she wrote the song for you. I really wanted like the dialogue when she talks, like I really wanted to make sure that it sounded like actually natural, like the way that a person would talk, because this whole game you have like visual novel dialogue, and they are like the way the sentences are formed are like just not natural for actual spoken voice. And so when she finally does speak, I wanted to make sure that the dialogue felt and like sounded natural, like a you know, that she was like feeling shy and anxious and like wanted to show you this song that she wrote for you. So I spent a long time on getting the exact phrasing and the pauses correct, and like making sure, and you know, the recording with the voice actor. It was like a very specific and deliberate process.
Can you hear me? Hi, it's me. So you know how I've been like practicing piano and stuff, and not really any good at it yet, like at all. But I wrote you a song, and I was kind of hoping that I could show it to you, because I worked really, really hard on it. So, yeah.
Okay, here we go again with commentary this time, so you can't actually listen to the song. Yeah, I really wanted
Every day, I imagine a future where I
you know, when I was thinking about the song in my head, the point where the credits would actually start was very clear. It was like when the guitar came in, I wanted to like show the logo and have the credits roll. Before then, it just felt appropriate to kind of like write the lyrics onto the screen as she was singing the song. The first line of the song I came up with before anything else. Every day I imagine a future where I can be with you, because in just humming the melody of the theme song to myself, the words kind of just, they like naturally flowed with the syllables of the words, naturally flowed with the rhythm and melody of the song.
that special day.
So I came up with that first very easily. But some of the other verses were a little bit more difficult to come up with, like, because each verse is kind of like a progression through the game, you know? And then the third verse is like the most lonely sounding, so I really wanted to kind of get that down in the lyrics. You know, in this second verse here with Monica just expressing her uncertainty and her inability to reach you. Another line that came really naturally was, what do you call love in your reality? Which is, you know, why the song is called Your Reality, of course. But I really liked the way that the line sounded. When I'm thinking about like song lyrics, and oftentimes I'm talking about songs that I like, just the flow of the syllables and the phonetics like always really stand out to me. And that was a line where I really loved the way that it flowed. I can't really explain it any better than that. Oh yeah, this little interlude in the credits roll, how I have the 4 chibi stickers bouncing around, I really liked that as well. I was hoping that it would just give people that little additional pang of emotion to like see all the 4 characters lined up and having fun together.
I'll leave you be.
The last line is like very literal and deliberate. I figured just given the state of the game, like she doesn't need to beat around the bush about like, like this is the ending that I'm making for you right now. If this isn't gonna work out, then like I'll leave you be, and I will make the game no more. And then let's see other random comments I can come up with. Another line where I really loved the phonetics was when you hear everything that we do is fun for them anyway. Just the way that the words kind of like bounced through the line. I just I don't know why I just really love the phonetics in that line. You know what sometimes when I talk about this end credits song, I talk about Portal as well because, Still Alive was the first time that I heard like an end credits song, and it's very easy to draw like a tie between like that and this game as far as the end credits go. Just the fact that that's another famous example of the game using an end credits song to conclude the game. But what I most strongly remember is the emotions that I felt when going through those credits, and how GLaDOS's words and the way her inflection changed, changed the way that I felt throughout the song, Because first it's like a little comedic, and then it's like, you don't feel bad for her until like the third verse when she says, "Go ahead and leave me. I think I prefer to stay inside." I think when I heard that line, I felt like so much emotion. And it was that sort of all-encompassing conclusion that gave me the full range of emotions that made me never forget the concept of having an end credits song and using that to appropriately conclude a game. And I thought it was such a great choice for this game. What else? I think that's most of what I had to say about it. It was really fun to design. The deletion of the pictures as the credits roll happened. Just a fun little additional element that it's this nice credits song, but then she's deleting the game as the credits are rolling, and I feel like that might add an additional emotional layer for some people. Now I'm not gonna go back and do the good ending, but that was it was one of those things where I knew there would at least be a few players who wanted to see everything the game had to offer, and it would be so sad to not reward them for their efforts in doing so. When will I release my cover of the DK rap? I should submit a DDLC run to AGDQ. And these are just all memes now, come on. There are some speedrunning strats for DDLC though. the problem is RNG is too much of a factor because it's more worth randomly clicking through the poem game or button mashing through it than it is to like deliberately pick the words, because you can save so much time by doing that. But then you just have to get lucky and get the shortest exclusive scenes with the characters. So it would effectively be replaying until you just got the shortest combination. I don't know why I've thought about that before, but tell about the rest of Team Salvato. There's nobody to talk about because the only member of Team Salvato is me. At least right now, anyway. Oh yeah, I saw the Zero Punctuation review. It was very entertaining. It was an honor to receive a video from them. Zero Punctuation, they go way back, right? That was like, yeah, that was like early YouTube days. I don't know much about their beginning, but yeah, they go like way back. And I have a soft spot for like the OGs, Zero Punctuation, Boogie 2988, Angry Video Game Nerd. Yeah, I love those guys. They like they were like pioneers of not just YouTube culture, but like video game content creation culture. You know, they like invented video game based like video entertainment in a way. I'm sure there's like a million others that I'm just not giving credit. I'm only naming the ones that I've been like familiar with, if that makes sense. Now everyone's asking like, have you seen X and Y and Z? Yeah, I've seen the game theory videos, and it was also an honor to receive so many videos from them, and they were very entertaining to watch. Really happy that they were able to make those contributions to the fan community. Was I friends with the artist before the creation, or did I go out and scout? I had to search for artists, so I went out of my way to find them. How long have I been designing games? That's I don't have like a good answer to that because I've like messed around with game design since I was like a kid, you know. But the point at which I started seriously trying to make games was probably like in college. And you know, it's not like I released anything else as far as like games go, but I at least got, you know, some game design experience through like various failed projects. The strongest piece of advice that I always give for people like starting out in something like game design is to like make the scope of your project as small as absolutely possible, because you're almost guaranteed to very strongly underestimate the amount of work that goes into it and the amount of motivation you'll have from start to finish. And one of the strongest skills you can have is the ability to think realistically about a project and everything that will need to go into it and the scope of it. So by deliberately limiting scope, or by taking your more ambitious projects and putting them on the back burner for the future, you can actually, you know, work on things that have a really good chance of getting done. Things where they're small enough that you can make tangible progress on a daily basis, and you never feel lost or like you're not getting anywhere. And the other component of that is making a game is a learning process in itself, and I think it's one of the best ways to learn the skills that you need to make a game is to do it. But in order to do that, the scope has to be small so that you can learn just the couple of skills it takes in order to reach your end goal. And by that point, once you do reach the end goal, you have learned those skills and you can build on top of them for the next project and slowly increase your scope as time goes by. DDLC took me about a year and a half to make, maybe closer to 2 years, but sometimes the project was like off and on, so I can't give an exact time period. But that can also help put it into perspective because, you know, one, it's a visual novel where the game engine like just existed for me, so that was a lot of development effort saved. There's not nearly as many moving parts in visual novels. And it's a relatively short game. It's like 4 hours long for maybe like average reading speed, 4 or 5 hours long. And that's still something that took me like almost 2 years to make. So, you know, putting that into perspective, like think about the scope of DDLC and, you know, try to relate it to the scope of like a project that you might have in mind. And that might help you assess how difficult it would be to make something like that. Not directly, because you're like, unless you're making a visual novel as well. And it also depends on like, you know, the skill sets that you have versus the skill sets that I had when I started making DDLC in assessing those things. But it might give you a general idea of like how easy it is to underestimate the amount of work that goes into it. DDLC was made in the Ren'Py visual novel engine. The game was free because even if the game was $1, there would be so many people who would not bother. Like people who are not normally in the audience or demographic for visual novels or dating sims, you know, those are the people who are way more likely to play it if, like, you know, oh, they're hearing about the game and they hear it's good, but they don't normally play these games and it looks stupid on the surface, but it's free and it's short, so you might as well check it out. I think there are like so many of that people, and it benefited tremendously from being free for that reason. I cared more about the ability to share a visual novel experience with an unlikely demographic than I did about like trying to charge money for the game. Will I stream more often? I would love to stream more often. Once I get my life together, maybe, and I can like at least stream regularly, maybe once a week or something like that. I don't know. I would love to do that. It just requires, you know, being like a responsible human being, which I'm very bad at. My favorite Smash game, considering every factor, I think my favorite Smash game is Smash for Wii U. I've of course put the most time into competitive Melee, and I love playing Melee, and it feels so good to play, but Wii U is closer to the experience that I most look for in a game like Smash, and Ultimate is even closer to that. So Ultimate is easily going to be my favorite Smash game once it comes out. And I'm going to main Link, of course. Unless Ashley is announced as a character, then I'm maining Ashley. Melon% will reach a GDQ once I route an alternative to it. Right now the run is too long, so I plan on creating a modified Melon% that's like sub 1 hour and is only half the levels. And I think that would get accepted if it was like sub 1 hour. No, I don't plan on modding Smash Ultimate. I didn't do any modding for Smash Wii U. That was just a thing that I wanted to do for Melee, but that's kind of behind me. I don't plan on doing that for Ultimate. Have I thought about using Patreon? It wouldn't make sense for me because Patreon is for like, or I think the platform works best for like content creators who like regularly put out content, and like strongly engage with the community and stuff like that. It's more about the person and less about the thing, you know? I like being more about the thing. I like it when um, I like it when there is a community around or there is appreciation for things that I make. You know, I like when my accomplishments are recognized, but I don't like the attention being on me, myself. It's like I am not able to handle that. I think that's oftentimes like why I like can go for a while without tweeting because like even just like tweeting can be stressful for me. Even if it's just like a stupid or silly tweet, for some reason it's just like it incurs like some deal of stress. And so, you know, in an ideal world, like you know, when I have everything together, and I'm in a good mood, like, yeah, I can happily tweet and, you know, it's great and it doesn't affect me that much. But, you know, and like, you know, when you're like bogged down by things, things that would normally not really be stressful or be just the tiniest bit stressful, like negligibly so, become like much more, much more to handle. That's kind of the way it is like that. That was a tangent, but my point is like it's really hard for me to handle like the attention being on me, as opposed to just the things that I do. Yo, Silva Gunner's awesome. Thank you for your contributions to that. Plans for Team Salvato. I mostly want to kind of get things in order, with like the business itself so that I can focus more on making games again. So I'm taking steps to obtain assistance with like business related affairs. So that's kind of where it is now. So yeah, as far as DDLC goes, um, you know, it would be really great for there to be some kind of like additional content for, uh, you know, the franchise in general. Um, you know, this is like when I talk about this, like I'm being 0% cryptic. I'm just like being, you know, fully upfront with, you know, the stuff that I have going on. Um, you know, and that's, you know, the way that I feel is that it would be really great to have like additional content for the DDLC universe in general. I know how much it means to people, and like that they, you know, want to get more out of the characters and the universe, you know, and there is some like stuff to expand on. You know, does that mean that I'm gonna make like a sequel to DDLC? Probably not, because I think a sequel just would make zero sense given the story itself. And it was something that I, from the beginning, wanted to be like a, you know, a one-off complete experience. But that doesn't mean there's no room for like some additional content somehow. The question is like, how would it appear? Through what medium? Through like, you know, what kind of like through what means, and, you know, what kind of content. That's you know, something that I would really love to make happen. And so you know, I think that it will happen eventually, but it's just going to take time, you know, like everything else. It feels like once you enter the world of business, everything moves more slowly. It takes so long to like get a lot of things done. And because of the additional responsibilities, I have less time to focus on actually making games, as I mentioned before. But these are all things that I feel like I'm starting to get in order, and so things like will start moving along fairly nicely, and I'll be able to give things like DDLC and my future projects like the attention that I would like to. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing. But yeah, I am working on other stuff. I'm working on a new visual novel. I have like a couple of random side projects, but my next big project is going to be another visual novel. I think that's pretty much all I have to say on it right now. I've wanted to talk about this all in like a blog post. I've even put that off for a long time because that was stressful to think about. So, I'm not trying to I'm just trying to like casually talk about like the stuff that I have going on. I'm not ready to like make any big announcements about anything. But it's like people deserve to have an update. I wouldn't really expect anything this year, because the timeline that I had in mind before I released DDLC was very different. Because my expectations for like the response of DDLC and the attention that it would get was very, very different, and I did not anticipate all of the changes that I would have to make in my life and in my business, that ultimately would result in like a different timeline for my future projects. It took it's taken like a very long time to get fairly basic things in order, and because of that, I would really say that it's that nobody should like hold their breath regarding my future projects. I will be ready to talk about them like when I'm ready, and right now I just can't really say when that is. So, that's the I guess the general update that I think that you deserve. I will talk about that in a blog post fairly soon as well, just to give everyone like a general update with where I am. I don't want to like disappoint anyone, because the fact is that I am working on stuff, and it like these things will happen eventually, but it just takes time. And I'm very grateful for everyone's patience and respect, and their enjoyment of the stuff that I do, and their willingness to contribute to it with additional fan content and things like that. That all means so much to me, and that's the reason that I want to keep doing these things for everybody. So yeah, that's my little monologue on the state of Team Salvato and where I hope to take things in the future. So thank you, everybody. I think before I sign off, I just kind of got like a kind of got my Stepmania setup updated a little bit, so I feel like it's worth showing that off for like 10 minutes or so before I sign off. If you're not familiar with Stepmania, then it's in your best interest to stick around. It's some really cool stuff. Let me just see if I can get the scene working. Okay. Hey, we're back. Now let me just get the output working as well. Sorry if that was loud. Sorry, I totally forgot that I just like had music playing there. You thought the scares were over. You were wrong. I apologize. That's actually kind of slow. It should be 675. I don't know why that reset to 625. Game is quite laggy while I stream. I'm gonna have to look into that, see if I can fix it in the future. I do want to stream Stepmania every now and then. I have like 2 hours of anime techno music that I can just like stream. also got a 60 FPS webcam, which is on the way, which will make this more pleasing to watch as well. Stamina is kind of suffering. Pretty rusty because I played with 4 fingers for a while, but I'm switching back to 2 fingers, so I have to like rework up my stamina muscles for songs like this one. That's just like 4 minutes each stream. Well, I'll do like 2 more songs and then I'm gonna sign out. Just wanted to show you that. Might as well go a little bit faster. Let's see, what speed was that at? 210. Let's do 240. I think this is 240. No, not that one. My bad. I'll pack my in delta. 230, sorry. After this, I'll try 240. Oh yeah, I can turn down the audio a little bit more. My bad. Unless that's too quiet, I wasn't really paying attention. Alright, where's that, Actually, how long is this track? This one's long. I don't know if I'm gonna do this. It's 4.5 minutes long. I already did like one stamina track. Let me see, I have a couple other good ones. I'll just check and see how long that they are. That one's too long. This one should be good. I don't want to John, but the lag spikes really are throwing me off. Alright, that's enough for now. I'll probably be streaming more Stepmania in the future with tons of fun anime remixes, so, you know. But it's already pretty late. I just wanted to show it off for like, 10 or 15 minutes, so, yeah. Thanks everyone for sticking around. I'll try to let you know well in advance if I plan on streaming again anytime soon. I think once a week would be nice, just to mess around with other stuff that I like to do, speedrunning and rhythm games and whatever else. So yeah, let's just bring this back up here real quick so I can say goodbye. Oh, look, that's still there too. That's cute. All right. Yeah, thank you so much again, everyone, for joining me through my little DDLC playthrough and commentary for the anniversary of the game. I know that the third stream was kind of late, but I'm still glad that I got to wrap things up, and hope that you enjoyed yourselves and maybe learned some fun stuff about the game along the way. So I hope to see you around again soon. Hope to keep making cool stuff for everybody. And thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night, and I will see you again soon.